All right, man, peace. So, the former backup quarterback of the New England Patriots, Jimmy Garoppolo, was traded to the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Antonina, thank you. John Lynch making moves. The Jimmy G trade is now official, folks, as the Pats sent their backup quarterback to the Niners for a 2018 second-round pick. Bill Belichick was asked about the trade yesterday. Here's Bill.
We probably had, in my opinion, the best quarterback situation in the league for the last, call it 2.5 years. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, Bill, let's be honest, because you were forced to make a decision due to the fact that Tom Brady has come back and played so proficiently. You really want to move on to Garoppolo, but you can't because Tom Brady is basically a son to the owner of the New England Patriots, Bob Kraft. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Given the way that things are set up, it's definitely not something that we wanted to walk away from, and I felt like we rode it out as long as we could. We, over a period of time, explored every option possible to try to sustain it. At this point, felt like we had to make a decision.
Hey, man, look, it's like a guy with a great wife and a great mistress. He's given a choice. You can only have one. You got to stick with the wife because the mistress has not shown that she can be there with you through adversity. So Garoppolo had to get dropped. That's all it was. So right now, Tom Brady has to play at least another 2 to 3 years so that it gives New England time to drop a quarterback and develop him so that he can be replaced. So this will not be Tom Brady's last season, which we pretty much already knew anyway.
Will Kane is in the building. Hi, Will.
Good morning.
Good morning. So after hearing from Bill Belichick his high praise for Jimmy G there, and then we also heard how badly the Browns wanted to acquire him, did the Pats get enough?
Well, they didn't sell at the market high. I mean, if they got enough and you define that by did we get the biggest price that we could possibly get for Jimmy G, the answer, I think, is unequivocally no.
Yeah, but you know what? New England does not define how well they did in a trade by how high a draft pick they got. They don't really care about first-round draft picks. Their mentality is that their coaching staff is on such a high level that they'll take a second, third, or fourth-round draft pick and develop them into a player that can contribute to the team and fill their role. Long as they have Brady and enough receivers to catch passes from him, and a good enough left tackle to protect him efficiently, they're not really concerned with how many first-round draft picks they get. Their mentality is that we'll develop draft picks into players that can contribute to our style of play.
I mean, we all three of us speculated yesterday whether or not a second-round pick was all Jimmy G was worth, because that's not what we were hearing for like 6 months. I mean, you know, during the draft, we heard, could he be worth a first? Could he be worth the 12th pick that the Browns own in the draft? Could the Pats be looking for 2 firsts? But let's just say all of that, every one of those rumors is nonsense. Fine, reject it all. We know for a fact somebody out there was willing to pay more than a second-round pick for a guy that was deemed to be a possible franchise quarterback.
Oh, that's true. But was that person, was that executive, or was that team that was willing to give more than a second-round draft pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, did they have a close relationship with Bill Belichick? Belichick and most high-level coaches in professional sports or high-level executives, they're more likely to make deals with people that they're friendly with. I've stated this in the past. This is why you have executives like Sam Presti from the Oklahoma City Thunder, who always seem to make great deals. He obviously has very good people skills. He obviously has been able to create and foster very good relationships with the other executives in the NBA. A lot of what goes into these deals is how close you are with the people that you're working with, not only within your organization, but amongst the other organizations in the league.
Within 12 hours of this trade, we know that there was a trade between the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals for A.J. McCarron. Now, I think the story everybody's telling, the big faux pas, the big mess up here is that they didn't get the paperwork in, whether or not it was the Browns or the Bengals. They didn't get the paperwork in for the trade. But I feel like the detail everybody's missing is that the Browns were willing to give a second and a third for A.J. McCarron. So if the Bengals could get a second and a third for McCarron, why could the Pats only get a second for Garoppolo?
Well, the answer is that clearly the Pats wanted to do business with the 49ers. So the real question is, what is the relationship between Belichick and Lynch? Or what is the relationship between Belichick and the coach, Shanahan, for the San Francisco 49ers? Do they know each other firsthand? Do they know each other secondhand through Shanahan's father? Does John Lynch have a close relationship with Belichick? Those are the questions that you need to ask.
Look, their stats are fairly similar. They both have about 67% completion on roughly similar number of attempts. I mean, 5 touchdowns to 0 for Garoppolo, 6 to 2 for McCarron. But none of us think that McCarron had a bigger market out there than Garoppolo. There was more hype around Garoppolo. It doesn't matter if any of us think that he's actually better. We can all acknowledge the hype was around Garoppolo. The market was bigger for him. So why did he have less of a price tag on him, a smaller price tag?
Because the Bengals like McCarron more, Will. It's very straightforward. The Bengals like McCarron more than Garoppolo. Garoppolo suffered an injury last year as soon as he got his chance to play.
You mean the Browns?
Excuse me, the Browns. The Bengals have McCarron. The Browns like McCarron more. That's all. Whatever hype there is, in the end, it comes down to the actual buyer.
No, sir. I'm not buying that. Specifically, since the Browns were in talks to obtain Garoppolo for the last season and a half. I'm also not buying that they preferred A.J. McCarron over Jimmy Garoppolo because Garoppolo got injured last year. What you're saying does not make any sense. For all intents and purposes, A.J. McCarron's stock was far lower than Jimmy Garoppolo's, particularly on your network, in which everybody was wondering how and in what way the Patriots would be able to retain Jimmy Garoppolo. Nobody has been asking those questions about A.J. McCarron. So I'm sorry, sir, I'm not buying it.
And the Browns were willing to pay more for McCarron than for Garoppolo. And incidentally, when you say they don't get enough, this is exactly what I've been saying since yesterday. When you buy an insurance policy, you don't get the premiums back. If you don't cash in the policy because something happens, you don't get the premiums back. That is what you pay. That money is gone. And if you buy a policy for a 39-year-old quarterback, it's going to be much more expensive. Just in life, if you're 50 years old, get life insurance. It's going to be more expensive than when you're 20. So the Patriots, Bill Belichick, it's not as complicated, I think, with Belichick as people make it out to be. You see these organizations like the Spurs and others. They're very straightforward. They're analytical and cool about it. Belichick looks at Brady and looks at his age and says, I need to purchase insurance. The falling in terms of the draft stock they could have gotten between last year and now, when they actually pulled the trigger on the trade, represents the premiums they were willing to pay for that insurance. Period. That's all that happened. They were willing to pay it as a hedge against Brady. At this moment, obviously, Belichick believes Brady will be better than Garoppolo next year, so he pulls the trigger on the deal. And obviously, the Browns think McCarron's better than Garoppolo.
Well, here's how that doesn't make sense. And I understand his attempt at a metaphor with the insurance, but one must ask if the insurance was worth it the last 2 seasons, how come it's not worth it with 8 games left in this season? Even if you believe that he's going to leave, you still have a chance you had a chance to trade him last year. You could have did it last year. Clearly, with 8 games left in this season, Belichick understands that Garoppolo is leaving. They cannot keep him. And furthermore, Tom Brady's not going anywhere. The reason why Belichick held on to Garoppolo for so long was because he was really hoping that Tom Brady would retire. He's come to understand through Tom Brady's performance through the first 8 games this season that Tom Brady's not going anywhere. So now basically, because Belichick has to kowtow and acquiesce to the whims of the owner, and I shouldn't say the whims because the owner for the Patriots has shown himself, Bob Kraft has shown himself to be a very steady and a level-headed person. But he is very loyal to Tom Brady. So Belichick understands he cannot even talk Bob Kraft into allowing him to get rid of Brady because of Brady's performance. So now he basically has no choice but to get rid of Garoppolo, who he wanted to transition over to, but knows that he can't because the timelines are not matching up. They're going to have to draft another quarterback and develop him over the next 2 to 3 years and hope that his development will be on the same level as Garoppolo's just in time for Brady to finally leave. That's all it's about.
Max, what are you, a sports pundit and commentator or an insurance agent? I don't understand I don't give a damn about premiums and all of this other stuff. The fact of the matter is that once upon a time, Garoppolo was out there and the Cleveland Browns appeared to be willing to give up more than a second round pick.
Thank you, sir. Once again, Kellerman is making an analogy that doesn't make sense because Cleveland was very interested in Garoppolo. They have been for the last year and a half. So to say that all of a sudden they're more interested in McCarron than him, no, that is not consistent with history.
This time around, they ended up settling for a second round pick, which makes me disgusted by you because you're making me agree with Will Cain. I mean, the fact of the matter is that that's what this comes down to. There is no way the New England Patriots, this is what it comes down to. Yes or no? And I'll give you, if you're capable of answering yes or no, I will ask this question to you, Max Kellerman.
You see what Stephen A. told Max Kellerman? He said if you're capable of saying yes or no. Why? Because he knows that Max Kellerman likes to engage in verbal diarrhea and linguistic gymnastics in order to make people forget the fact that most of the time he doesn't really know what he's talking about. But he figures if he can use enough verbiage, he can make people believe that he knows what he's talking about. That is why Stephen A. likes to have Will Cain on the show. Will Cain does not offset Stephen A. Smith. Will Cain is on the show to offset Max Kellerman.
Did the Patriots have an opportunity to get more than a second round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo before yesterday?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, there we go.
That's it. That's
And
all.
why did
That's
they-
all.
what don't you
Nothing else
understand?
matters.
I'm just curious.
Nothing
I'm
else
just curious.
matters. I mean,
What
that's
don't
what
you
this
two
comes down
understand?
to.
Stephen A.
Go ahead. Go
What
ahead,
don't
Max.
you understand
Go ahead,
about
Max.
the fact that the closer you get to having to pay a guy, which is where Garoppolo is, the less he is worth.
Let me answer that.
They knew
Let
that
me
would
answer that
happen if
question.
they held on to
Let
him.
me answer that question you just asked.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna reiterate what Will Cain said to you yesterday. You are the last person on earth that has a right to make that argument. Because what you're saying is we had to wait to see what Tom Brady is worth before we're willing to unload Jimmy Garoppolo. When you
Right.
were the one sitting there talking about how he's gonna fall off a cliff in January.
And
you
my
don't
point
get to
is,
make both
what
arguments.
what Belichick's behavior tells you is that he thought there was a very good chance that my way of thinking was correct.
I agree with that. Belichick clearly wanted to wait and see how good Tom Brady was going to be this season because he knew the only way that he could sell Bob Kraft on keeping Garoppolo and getting rid of Tom Brady was if Tom Brady showed his age in the first 8 games or the early part of the season. Brady has not only played well, he's played on his normal level, which is MVP level. The one thing that I don't agree with Kellerman on is that Garoppolo's stock price would drop lower than an A.J. McCarron. For a guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo, if you truly believe that he's worth it, you're going to bring him in regardless. You're going to do whatever you can to bring him in. It's clear that the Cleveland Browns did not believe that the New England Patriots would be willing to make a deal with them. So, in my view, the real question is, what is the relationship between Bill Belichick and the coach or the GM of the San Francisco 49ers? Oftentimes you'll find that buddies make deals. Look at the deal that was made back in 2007 to bring Kevin Garnett over to the Boston Celtics. It's not a coincidence that you had Kevin McHale as the executive for Minnesota and Danny Ainge as the executive for Boston, former teammates.
And at the last second,
Go ahead, Will. Go ahead, Will.
Stop. And
Go ahead, Will.
at the last second, he determined, okay, I think Brady will be better than Garoppolo next year. I'm now willing to trade Garoppolo,
Max,
but he waited till
listen.
the last possible second to do it.
Let me answer your question. First of all, McCarron has the same contract, drafted in the same year as Garoppolo. He's about to get paid as well. So that doesn't differentiate their value whatsoever.
Bingo.
Thank you.
No,
This
they think
idea-
McCarron's
hold
better.
on, let me address.
Why would they think McCarron is better, Max? Based on what? See, once Will Cain was able to establish that they both were drafted in the same year and they're both up for contract, now Max Kellerman is in a position where either he has to admit that he's wrong or he has to make up a straw man argument to persist, which oftentimes will show somebody's integrity or lack thereof. Who in their right mind would think that A.J. McCarron is better than Jimmy Garoppolo, as I've already stated, just based off of how Garoppolo has been covered, namely by ESPN? It's almost a consensus belief that Garoppolo is a star waiting to happen. Nobody believes that about A.J. McCarron.
Address all all of the things you've laid out. This insurance theory that you've laid out is your last-ditch attempt to save your cliff theory. The problem with your whole analogy is this. Insurance is designed to save you in terms of catastrophe. The first 8 games of the New England Patriots season were not the potential for catastrophe. Losing Brady then wasn't the potential. There's still a problem. If he gets hurt in week 12, the Patriots' Super Bowl hopes are over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is why I already stated. If what Max Kellerman is saying is true, then why would they get rid of Garoppolo at all? If he is truly the insurance, then they need him as the insurance for the entire season. You don't pay all those premiums, just to continue Max Kellerman's analogy. You don't pay all those premiums and then all of a sudden just stop paying them just because you don't feel like paying them anymore. You've already invested too much money. You might as well keep paying them.
And guess what? They don't have their insurance policy you like to talk about. Belichick, if you don't believe me, listen to Belichick. He said, we ran this as long as we could, meaning we had to do this not because of insurance, but because a trade deadline is here, and we ran this as long as we could. The guy who sells when he has to sells at a low. We agree on this. If Belichick had traded him earlier, he would have gotten more. And what more? Maybe you're right on this one, Max. Maybe the Browns liked McCarron more than Garoppolo, but they're the only people out there that did, and it's the Browns. So
agreed. One must consider the source. One must consider the organization. But let me say this: I don't believe that the Patriots only got a second rounder when they could have got more, because the Browns were no longer interested. As I've already stated, I believe that the Patriots, that Belichick has some form of a relationship with Shanahan, maybe through his father or with John Lynch. And that is why he gave up Garoppolo for a little bit less, because he easily could have called the Browns and said, look, Garoppolo's on the market. We'll get, we already heard that you're trying to get A.J. McCarron for a second and a third. We'll give him to you for that same deal. And he easily could have got that done. So the fact that he decided to work with San Francisco tells me that there was a personal relationship involved.
So I can't discount that kind of insanity.
Well, I have to think are you intentionally missing this point? He held on to him, you just said, as long as he could. He tried to work out a deal with him. When it turned out that they couldn't come to terms with Garoppolo, they couldn't get him at a price they thought they could live with, then they had to move him. But they waited till the last second.
That's fine, Max, but that doesn't give your insurance theory or cliff theory any credence. That doesn't save either of those theories. Yes, he held on to him because he wanted to see if he could work out a deal. You want to see if he could get a better deal.
Let me ask you something. Is it well known by everyone who follows this stuff that the closer you come to getting paid, the less trade value you will have?
Yes, for A.J. McCarron and
so Belichick was aware. So Belichick was aware that if he couldn't come to terms with Garoppolo at a price they could live with, he would get less return for Garoppolo, right? He was aware of that.
Yes, Max, but the thing is,
so he was willing to
parallel. There's an exact.
So he was willing to accept the decline in Garoppolo's trade value as a hedge against Brady's decline.
That's the part that you're making up. That's the part that's the Max Belichick.
Why else would he do it?
Okay, Max, you're reading the tea leaves like everybody else cannot. We're all stupid, and you're reading the Belichick whispering perfectly. Meanwhile, there's an
You said it, but okay.
Meanwhile, there's an exact parallel. A.J. McCarron garnered a second and a third, but for it being fumbled, and Garoppolo just a second. How does that make sense to anyone?
Because McCarron didn't not coming off a big injury as Garoppolo was.
No, sir. No. What you said is that Cleveland likes A.J. McCarron more than they like Garoppolo. And Garoppolo is not coming off of a big injury. Coming off of a big injury is if you just got hurt 3 weeks ago. He was hurt over a year ago. Okay? For all intents and purposes, he is fully healthy and ready to go. A.J. McCarron has not shown any potential for stardom in the NFL, while Garoppolo has.
And the Browns like him more than Garoppolo. That's so straightforward. They think McCarron's worth a little more than Garoppolo.
How do you know that?
Yeah, how do you know that?
Because they just paid more for McCarron than Garoppolo.
Garoppolo was gone. He had already gotten traded to the San Francisco 49ers.
And if they wanted to trade for him, they would have offered that because that's more than the Patriots got.
How do you know, though? You're the Belichick whisperer. How do you know Belichick was going to do a deal with Cleveland?
It's possible. There was simply miscommunication between teams, but it's more.
No, sir. No, that's not how it works. There's no miscommunication between the teams. Once again, as I already stated, if Belichick really wanted to make the deal with Cleveland, that's who he would have called. And they would have stayed on the line and they would have said, okay, Bill, no problem. And that would have been that. The fact of the matter is that it's very clear once again, that Bill Belichick has a personal relationship with either Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch, and he wanted to do them a solid. He wanted to do them a favor. Belichick has already mapped out on his whiteboard the first 10 quarterbacks in the draft that he wants to bring in for whoever's available when the Patriots pick comes around. Period. It has nothing to do with anything that Max Kellerman is talking about. There's no way in the world that Cleveland wants A.J. McCarron over Jimmy Garoppolo. And who knows, A.J. McCarron might become a better quarterback than Jimmy G if given the chance. Who the hell knows? But in regards to public esteem and stock, Jimmy Garoppolo's stock is far higher than A.J. McCarron's.
More likely that the Browns were simply. What's the more likely scenario? That the teams just missed each other like ships in the night in terms of communication? Simply that the Browns
didn't that just happen with Cleveland? Didn't just happen with Cleveland with a phone call? Anything's possible.
Yeah, well, with Cleveland, that's a good point.
All right.
I forgot we were talking about Cleveland.
Yeah.
Oh, now you forgot they're talking about Cleveland. Your dumbass has developed this silly theory, but now all of a sudden you forgot that they were talking about Cleveland. Somebody need to check this guy for drugs.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Well, always getting them all riled up. That was fun. Appreciate it.
But anyway, this is the coverage of the Jimmy Garoppolo trade. It's going to be interesting to see what Kyle Shanahan can turn him into. And he's going to be in a very tough division with Legion of Boom, with an up-and-coming team like the LA Rams, and also with the Arizona Cardinals and the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, who's also extremely, extremely talented, even though their quarterback is pretty much done, Carson Palmer. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, peace.